jump right in. Now, we're starting with questions 1 through 3, and they kind of focus on domain and range, and then they jump into average rate of change. So I'm gonna write some notes over here to follow that. So we got domain and range, right? And domain and range, remember, domain is just the list of inputs for your function, or the list of x values. And then range is the list of outputs, excuse me, or y values. So x values go left to right, and y values go from bottom to top. So let's look at this problem. Use a graph for items 1 through 3. The graph shows the distance of a remote control drone above the ground as it flies from west to east. The x-axis, that's this line right here, represents the distance from a central point. So like the point that you're starting at. So I'm standing here, I'm starting to fly the drones, and the x-axis represents how far the drone is away from me. And the y-axis represents the distance above the ground. So how high it flew as opposed to how long, how much distance it flew. So the first thing they're asking us is, what's the range? So range, like we said, is bottom to top. So I look at the lowest point of my graph, which is right here. And that's when y equals 0. And then the highest point on my graph is right here. And that's when y is 1, 2, 3. So then that would mean that my range is 0 to 3. 0 to 3. That's range. I go from the lowest point to the highest point as far as the graph goes for my range. Excuse me. And then next, what does the domain of the function tell you about the drone's flight? Well, we just said that going from left to right, that's our domain. We also just said that going from left to right, it represents the distance from a central point, or how far, like I'm driving this drone, how far it is away from me. So at this point right here, where x equals -4 is like my starting point. Starting point is -4. The ending point is 4. And so each one of these little hash marks represents a meter that the thing traveled. So if I sit there and count from um, -4 to +4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 meters I traveled. And that just happens to be C. Because how high the drone flew, that's Y. That's got nothing to do with X. How long the drone flew, excuse me, that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. It doesn't say anything about the time. And then the drone landed once. That doesn't have anything to do with our X values. So it's C. Does anybody have any questions on 1 or 2? No questions? All right, then let's work our way to number 3. So number 3 is dealing with average rate of change. And with average rate, matter of fact, it's the average rate of change over the interval. Oops, misspelled interval. Um, -4 to +4. Excuse me. So the thing is, average rate of change has a specific formula. The formula is for A to B is F of B minus F of A divided by B minus A. Well, I already know from just the problem, my A is going to be -4 and my B is going to be +4. So from jump, I can just plug and chug that in there. So I'm going to have F of +4. Whoop, that don't look like a 4. So F of +4 minus F of -4 divided by +4 minus a -4. So it's easy for me to simplify the bottom. 4 minus a -4. When you subtract the negative, it's the same as adding a positive. So that's 4 plus 4. So the bottom is 8. The top is a little bit trickier, but not really. So now, in order to get the function with the input of 4, I go back to my graph. Going back to my graph, inputs are x, outputs are y's. So if I look at 4 and I look at where my graph is at 3. Remember, input is your x values, output is your y values. Input goes left or right, output goes up or down. So if I'm looking left or right when x equals 4, it goes up to 3. So then that tells me f of 4 is 3. And now I need to know what f of -4 is. So then I go over here, f of -4. There's -4, and my dot is right there on y equals 0. So 0. So now I plug that in. I got 3 minus 0 over 8, which just gives me 3 over 8. 3 over 8. Now the thing is, if you change it to a decimal, it will be 0.375. Now, I don't care whether you change it to a decimal or not. The fraction is fine for me. The book wants you to change it to a decimal. All right. Does anybody got any questions on average rate of change? It's just a matter of remembering this little formula, which you can add notes. A matter of having this formula and then plug and chug in there what values you got. Then double check the graph to see what values correspond. So now we just got a problem that's got nothing to do with those. So we got find f of -3 for f of x equals -2x plus 5. This is just a plug and chug problem. You got function notation. You got function notation, right? So f of -3. So if I think of f of -3 in my equation part, wherever there's an x, I'm gonna put a -3. So that's going to be f of -3 is -2 times -3 plus 5. Well, a negative times a negative is a positive. So that's going to be +6 plus 5. And 6 plus 5 equals 11. And so 11 is my answer for that one. So anybody got any questions on number 4? Does anybody have any questions on number 4? All right, so then let's look at number 5. Where does the graph of function f of x equals 2x minus 3 intersect the y-axis? Well, they're talking about intersecting, and they gave us some kind of equation. So that puts us in the mind of slope intercept form. That's when we got y equals mx plus b, where m is the slope and b is the y-intercept. So now I just look at what I got. So I got f of x and y. In this case, we're just kind of using them interchangeably. So f of x equals 2x minus 3. So that would mean m is going to be 2. That's my slope. And then my y-intercept is going to be negative 3. Y-intercept means exactly that. It's the point where your graph intersects the y-axis. So then they're saying, where does the function intersect the y-axis? At y equals negative 3. That's the y-intercept. So anybody got any questions on number 5? All right. Let's see. How much room do I got? Yeah, I guess we can try it. All right. So number 6. Number 6 is a system of equations problem. System of linear equations, actually. So I got words. I need to take the words and change them to symbols. So Emery makes 8 necklaces and 3 bracelets using a total of 172 beads. Then she makes 1 more necklace and 5 more bracelets using 77 beads. Write and solve a system of equations to find how many beads Emery uses in each necklace and bracelet. Then calculate the beads Emery uses to make 4 necklaces and 7 bracelets. So I go back to the beginning. Emery makes 8 necklaces and 3 bracelets. So first thing I'm going to do, so like step 1 is label or define my variables. So I'm going to say n is going to be the beads, the number of beads to make a necklace. And then I've got B, that's the number of beads to make a bracelet. So now I got my variables labeled N and B. So now I'm gonna step 2, I'm gonna write some equations. I'm gonna put some symbols up from the words. So 8 necklaces and 3 bracelets using a total of 172 beads. So that's going to be 8 times N plus 3 times B equals 172. Because remember, N is the number of beads it takes to make a necklace, and B is the number of beads it takes to make a bracelet. So 8 times N and then 3 times B gives me 172. Then she makes one more bracelet, so then that's N or 1N, and 5 more I'm sorry, one more necklace. So one more necklace, that's N or 1N, and 5 more bracelets, so that's going to be 5B, and using 77 beads, so that's going to be equals 77. So now I've got 8N plus 3B equals 172, and then N plus 5b equals 77. So I got two equations now. The question is, do I want to use substitution or do I want to use elimination? Well, the problem kind of lends itself to either one. It doesn't really matter. Um, if I'm going to do, excuse me, elimination, I'm going to take 8n plus 3b equals 172. And then I'm going to look at the second equation, n plus 5b equals 77. I need to multiply this second equation by some number. When I combine it with the top equation, my n's are going to go away. So what's the number I need to multiply by? I've got 8n on the top equation, and I've got n on the bottom. What do I need to multiply by when I combine these two things? There's going to be no n's left. -8. Not just 8, but -8. Because if I multiply by 8, and when I combine them, I'm going to have 8 plus 8. But if I multiply by -8, I'm going to have 8 and plus a -8, or 8 minus 8. So I'm going to multiply everything in the second equation by -8. So the first equation stays the same. And now I got 8 times n, so that's -8n. Then I've got -8 times 5b, that is going to be -40b. And then I've got -8 times 77. Well, -8 times 7 is what, 56? Carry the 5. -8 times 7 is 56. Plus 5 is a -61. So that's -616. So now I'm going to combine these two equations. This and this cancel each other off. It goes to 0, so it's gone. Don't even need to worry about it anymore. But here I've got a positive 3b and a negative 40b. So that's going to give me -37b. And then here I've got a positive 172 and I got a negative 616. So let's see, it's going to be a negative. I got 4 right there. I got to borrow. So that's going to be 444. So now I got a -37b equals a -444. So I need to divide by -37. So just to make things simple, all right, so we say negative, whoop, not negative, 0. We say 444 and then make it negative, and then divide by 37 and make it -12. So B equals 12. So the number of beads it takes to make a bracelet is 12. And so now I take that 12 and I plug it, say, into my second equation. I've got n plus 5 times 12 equals 77. And I got n plus, well, 5 times 12 is 60, equals 77. If I subtract 60 from both sides, I get n equals 17. So now I got 17 for that one, 12 for this one. And now the last part of the problem, it says calculate how many beads Emery uses for 4 necklaces and 7 bracelets. So that means I got to start a new equation. I got to have 4 times n plus 7 times b. Well, I know n is 17, so that's 4 times 17 plus 7 times 12. Well, 7 times 12 I know is 84. 7 times 17, let's see, 7 times 4 is 28, carry the 2. 4 times 1, so that's 68. And then I add those two things together, and then that's what I get. I end up getting 152. And so I was able to use system of linear equations to find my values, and then I take those values and plug them into one more equation to get an answer. So anybody got any questions on number 6? Because that's a little involved. So anybody got any questions on 6?